25 meters down, in the current off a tiny Japanese island, a diver's light crosses a corner. 90 degrees. Sharp as a table edge, cut clean into solid rock. Nobody put it there. Or did they? This is the Yonaguni Monument, and depending on who you ask, it is either the oldest submerged city ever found, or simply a rock that happened to break the right way. Before we tell you which, understand this. Some of the world's own qualified geologists disagree with each other about it, in print, on camera, and in person, to this very day. In 1986, a local dive tour operator named Kiichiro Arate was scouting a new site to watch hammerhead sharks gather off the coast of Yonaguni, Japan's westernmost inhabited island, far out in the East China Sea. What he found instead had nothing to do with sharks. Rising from the seabed was a colossal formation of flat terraces, straight edges, and sheer stepped walls, stacked like a ziggurat under the waves. Word spread fast. Within a few years, marine researchers, television crews, and increasingly the diving public were descending to see it for themselves, and the site had a name before it had an explanation. And what they filmed looked, to untrained eyes, unmistakably built. Not a boulder tumbled by the sea. Not a coral reef grown by accident. Something with corners, and corners this clean are rare in nature. So the question that followed this site from that very first dive has never been fully settled in almost 40 years since, despite dozens of surveys and endless argument among people who genuinely know their rock, nature, or human hands. To understand why this argument has lasted so long, and why it still splits qualified experts today, you first need to see exactly what divers actually find down there, laid out feature by careful feature. The main formation stretches roughly 150 meters long, about 40 meters wide, and rises some 27 meters from its base, sitting between 5 and 25 meters below the surface depending on the tide. Its most striking feature is a series of broad, flat terraces, stacked one above another like a staircase built for a giant, each step running for meters in an almost perfectly straight line. Local dive guides gave the individual features names almost immediately: the stage, a broad flat platform near the top; the turtle, a raised loop of stone; the gate, formed by two standing pillars; and the road, a long straight channel. Names are powerful, and these names did real work. Once you call something a road, a stage, or a gate, it becomes very hard to look at the stone underneath and see anything else. The two tall standing pillars nicknamed the gate rise side by side near one edge of the formation, close enough together that divers can swim directly between them, like passing through an actual doorway. The road runs for a considerable stretch along one flank, wide enough to walk two abreast, its edges startlingly parallel for something that its skeptics insist was carved by nothing but seawater and time. Some faces of the formation drop away in sheer vertical walls, smooth and flat, meeting the terraces at what look like clean right angles, corner after corner, level after level. Divers have also documented a wide straight channel running along one side, cut with parallel walls of surprisingly even width, running for a considerable distance across the formation and disappearing into deeper water beyond the main terraces. So set the names aside for a moment, and start instead with the rock itself, because the rock has its own story to tell, one written millions of years before any diver arrived. The Yonaguni Formation is carved from sandstone and mudstone laid down roughly 20 million years ago, in flat horizontal layers, one thin bed stacked on another like pages in a book. This kind of rock has a habit. It does not just crumble at random. Under the right stress, it snaps cleanly along its bedding planes, and along a second, perpendicular set of natural fractures called joints. Where a flat bedding plane meets a straight vertical joint, the result is exactly what it sounds like: a corner. A 90-degree corner, produced by physics, not by a chisel in anyone's hand. Geologists have a name for this style of natural terrain, and it is not unique to Yonaguni in the slightest. It shows up in sandstone formations across the world, wherever the layering and jointing happen to line up just right. In fact, similar stepped, sharp-edged sandstone terraces exist in shallow water elsewhere around Okinawa's own coastline, at a site geologists call the Chaitan Formation, and nobody claims those are man-made, because nobody expected a lost city there. This is the core of the skeptical case, made by the majority of geologists who have examined the site directly. Given this exact rock, in these exact layers, nature alone can and does produce straight edges, flat planes, and sharp corners, at this scale, without any help at all. But not everyone agrees that nature explains all of it, and the leading voice on the other side of this argument is not a fringe hobbyist chasing a theory online. He is a marine geologist with decades of fieldwork behind him. Masaaki Kimura, a professor at the University of the Ryukyus, has dived the site well over 100 times since the early 1990s, and became convinced that at least part of the formation was shaped, or finished, by human hands. Kimura points to features he argues are hard to explain by fracturing alone: what look like stairways with even, walkable steps, a pair of holes drilled clean through a standing stone pillar, and straight parallel grooves crossing flat surfaces at angles natural jointing should not easily produce. He also argues the site was very likely quarried at its edges, that raw stone was cut away and removed nearby, and he reports finding what he describes as tool marks, and even a stone tool, close to the formation itself. Most striking of all, Kimura has argued that one section, high on the formation, resembles a carved face, two brow-like ridges above a hollow, though this specific claim remains the most disputed of everything he has ever proposed. Skeptics counter almost every one of these points directly, feature for feature. Natural stair-step terracing in this rock type is common and already well documented elsewhere on the island chain. The holes through the pillar, they argue, could be solution pits, worn open and wider by seawater and mineral dissolution over many thousands of years, rather than drilled by any tool. The parallel grooves, they argue, follow a genuinely predictable joint pattern for this specific sandstone, one that has already been mapped, measured, and confirmed in unrelated, entirely undisputed outcrops nearby on the same island. And the face, most geologists say plainly, is pareidolia, the very same trick of the mind that finds a man in the moon or an animal shape hiding in a passing cloud. So each side has a ready answer for the other side's strongest point, which is exactly why this argument has lasted this long, and why one more dive alone will not be the thing that finally settles it. There is one more piece of this puzzle, and it may be the hardest of all to wave away. It has nothing to do with the stone itself. It has to do with time. If any part of Yonaguni really was carved or built by people, it could not possibly have happened underwater. It would have to have been built on dry land, then flooded much later by rising seas. And geology gives us a real window for exactly that. During the last ice age, so much of the world's water was locked away in glacier that global sea levels sat roughly 40 meters lower than they do today. At that lower sea level, sometime between roughly 10 and 12,000 years ago, the ground where the monument now sits would have stood in open air, exposed to sun, wind, rain, and human feet, if anyone was there at all to walk it. Which means the window for human construction, if it truly happened, is narrow and specific, and it lands right at the very last stretch of the last ice age, before the water finally closed over it for good. And that is where the theory runs directly into its hardest problem. 10 to 12,000 years ago, the archaeological record for this exact region shows small bands of hunter-gatherers of the German culture. These were people who left behind pottery, shell tools, and distinctive cord-marked ceramics, real and well-studied artifacts that survive in museums across Japan to this day, giving us an actual, physical record of what this specific culture was and was not yet capable of building. Nowhere else on Earth, at that same early date, do we have confirmed evidence of any culture cutting monumental staircases or quarrying stone platforms on anything close to this scale. The oldest confirmed megalithic architecture anywhere else in the world, from Göbekli Tepe onward, comes thousands of years later than this window, which would make Yonaguni, if truly man-made, an outlier with no known peer anywhere on the planet. That gap, between the simple tools we know these early islanders actually possessed, and the engineering the monument theory would require of them, is the single hardest problem Kimura's case has never fully closed. Kimura has answered this too, arguing the dating window could be pushed later than the initial flooding, that parts of the site may have been finished or modified in more recent, far better attested periods. Mainstream geologists remain unconvinced by that revision too, and most independent surveys of the site, including government-linked studies commissioned by Okinawa Prefecture, have leaned toward the natural explanation as the simpler, better supported one. But simpler is not always certain, and Yonaguni keeps drawing serious researchers back year after year, precisely because a stubborn handful of details still resist a completely clean and total natural explanation. The site has also drawn far less careful attention. Popular writers and television specials have folded Yonaguni into sweeping claims of a global lost civilization, wiped from history by some ancient catastrophe. Almost none of those broader claims hold up to scrutiny on their own, and serious researchers on both sides of the Yonaguni debate, natural and man-made alike, tend to distance themselves from that wider mythology entirely. This is not a site where one camp is obviously right and the other obviously wrong. It is a site where honest, credentialed experts, looking at the exact same stone, have reached opposite conclusions for over 3 decades. Every few years, new dive surveys, sonar scans, and detailed 3D photogrammetry models add fresh detail to the picture, feeding fresh papers and fresh conference arguments, without ever fully resolving the question in either direction. Kimura has also reported smaller, separate stone features scattered elsewhere around Yonaguni's coastline, additional terraces and what he describes as a possible second, smaller structure, none of which have been independently confirmed as anything but natural. Yonaguni Island itself is tiny, a few thousand people, closer to Taiwan than to mainland Japan, and long before any diver ever found the monument, it already had its own deep local folklore about the sea and the ancestors who came before. That local backdrop matters. Long before Kimura, before Aratake, before any camera crew arrived, island elders spoke of an old, half-remembered place beneath the waves, a detail some researchers find suggestive, and others dismiss as folklore reshaped after the fact by a discovery everyone already knew about. Whatever the truth of that older memory, the scientific debate itself has never fully closed, and every attempt to settle it definitively, on either side, has run into the same wall. The rock will not simply tell you who shaped it. Tourists now dive the site by the thousands every single year, guided past the stage, the gate, and the turtle, names given long before this debate was ever close to being settled. So where does that leave us? Not with a tidy verdict. With something rarer, a real, live, unresolved scientific question, sitting quietly in plain sight 25 meters under the Pacific. Here, laid out plainly, is the strongest case for nature alone. The rock is exactly the right type, laid down in exactly the right layers, to fracture into flat planes and right angles entirely on its own. Nearly identical step terraces exist in unclaimed, undisputed outcrops nearby on Okinawa's own coast, formations nobody has ever mistaken for ruins, because nobody went looking for a lost city there first. No confirmed tool mark has fully satisfied independent reviewers outside Kimura's own team. No artifact recovered directly from within the formation has been dated with certainty to prove human construction beyond doubt. The straight lines, the majority of geologists conclude after decades of study, are geology, not masonry, and the burden of proof still rests with the theory that says otherwise. And here, just as plainly, is the strongest case for human hands. The apparent stairways are remarkably regular and genuinely walkable for what would be a purely random fracture pattern. The paired, drilled-looking holes through the standing pillar remain hard for some geologists to fully explain away as ordinary erosion, given how precisely paired and evenly spaced they actually are. And the sheer coordinated scale of the flat terracing across the whole site, not one lucky fracture but dozens of them lining up together, is, even to several skeptical geologists, further than they originally expected pure jointing to reach. The honest answer, the one both camps will actually give you if you ask them directly and off the record, is that this remains genuinely unresolved. Most of Yonaguni is very likely, on the current evidence, entirely natural, but a small handful of its details still have not been fully and finally explained by either side of this argument. Which means the real story of Yonaguni is not a lost alien city, and it is not a slam-dunk human monument either. It is a working scientific argument, still actively being had, by people fully qualified to have it. That is rarer than a tidy answer, and in its own quiet way, more interesting than one, because the stone has not finished speaking yet.